Hi guys, my name is Sam Pierce and this is One Simple Man. Thank you for watching this week's video. I was hoping this week to be able to do something a little special for you guys, but the scheduling didn't really come through. But if all goes according to plan, next week it should be something a little different than what we're used to. But this week I want to talk to you guys about something that I hear a lot of people say, like, we all have things in our past that we're not proud of, things that we have done or maybe had done to us that still affects us today. And a lot of the time the imagery used for that is a scar. We talk about the scars of our past and scars, showing what is left over, the things that we think of as wounds from the things that have happened to us. But I think we're looking at it the wrong way. But let me read 2 Corinthians 1:3-7. Blessed be God, even the Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, the Father of mercies and the God of all comfort, who comforteth us in all our tribulation, that we may be able to comfort them which are in any trouble, by the comfort wherewith we ourselves are comforted of God. For as the sufferings of Christ abound in us, so our consolation also aboundeth by Christ. And whether we be afflicted, it is for your consolation and salvation, which is effectual in the enduring of the same sufferings which we also suffer. Or whether we be comforted, it is for your consolation and salvation. And our hope of you is steadfast, knowing that as ye are partakers of the sufferings, so shall ye also be of the consolation. Now Paul here is saying that the things that he's been through and that some of the other saints have been through, it's not just a thing that happened to him and only affected him. His experiences, his persecution, the things that he suffered through allowed him to see what it was like to be in that situation and minister to other people. And that's the way that we should look at the things that are in our past. I have friends who have been victims of abuse as a child, and they now use that to help other people work through that situation, or going through that now. And that's the way we should use these things. These aren't scars, they're tools that we've been given. And sometimes they can be the most effective tools that we have. It's easy to look at someone's situation and say, oh, I'm sorry, I know how you feel, it must be rough, or try to empathize with them, but it doesn't always ring true, especially if they know that you've never been in that situation, you have no idea what they're going through. But if you can tell someone, hey, I've been there, that happened to me, let me tell you how God brought me through it, that can be an amazing testimony and a great ministry tool. Genesis 50:20. And now this is Joseph in his last days talking to his brothers who had sold him into slavery, and he ended up in Egypt, ended up being a ruler of Egypt. But as for you, ye thought evil against me, but God meant it unto good, to bring to pass as it is this day, to save much people alive. Now, he was given that position, and that position allowed him to be able to save the lives of the people who relied on him for protection and for guidance and leadership. He was betrayed by his own brothers and sold into a foreign land in slavery. It looked like one of the worst possible positions he could have been in, but God used it for good. And Romans 8:28 says, for we know that all things worketh together for the good of those that love the Lord and are called according to his purposes. Every little thing that happens, whether it was intended to be good or not, can be used for good and will work out to your good if you're trusting and following the Lord. In the 3rd chapter of Daniel, we're told about Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. They were thrown into the furnace for trusting in God, for their faith. And, I would say a death sentence would be pretty high up on most people's list of worst possible scenarios. But because of that, not only did they survive, we have an account now of what this incredible faith can do and how it's rewarded. And that testimony has inspired who knows how many thousands or millions of people through the ages. And look at Job, the things that he went through. If you haven't read the book of Job, I would suggest reading that, because that is a perfect picture of how someone can lose absolutely everything. This poor guy, his entire life was destroyed, but even though his friends, his so-called religious friends, tried to say that it was his fault, it was his lack of faith, even his wife told him to curse God and die, he wouldn't. He kept his faith, and he was rewarded for that. And that was another example of how that story has been passed down, and we see that as an example for how we should be. So all these terrible things that have happened to people has been used for not only their good, but for the good of Christians thousands of years later. The ultimate example, I think, is the cross. God created all, among everything else, created all the plant life on this planet. So he created the tree that was made into the cross by the Romans. It was made into a symbol and a tool of persecution and torture and just horrible death. But he came in the form of a man and turned that cross to the ultimate good on this earth. More good was done with that piece of torture equipment than has been done anywhere else, by anything else in this world. And if that's not an amazing example of how the worst possible things can be turned to good, I don't know what is. So, just looking back on your life, the things that we're sometimes ashamed of, that we feel like because of these things we can't minister to others, we can't hold position in the church, we can't really feel like we're full of joy and an effectual Christian, those things we can use. They're tools. Use them. So look for people around you that may be in the same situations or going through some of the same things that you went through in your past, and see how, just open yourself to the possibility of being able to help them, and see how God will use you in that. Actually, going back to the cross image, the interesting thing, and I was watching this documentary yesterday, and that's our media recommendation for this week, is The History of Orthodox Christianity. It's on Amazon Prime. It may be on Netflix too. I'll check and see. We'll have the link in the description below. It's a 3-part series about the history of Orthodox Christianity, of course. But the first section deals with how the Roman Empire, which at the time covered almost all of the known world, and was very oppressive to the early Christian church. Christianity was outlawed because it caused so much stir and commotion and rioting among the Orthodox Jews that the Romans outlawed it to try to make it a little easier for them to rule the Jewish lands that they occupied. The infrastructure that they had was actually what allowed Christianity to spread so easily. The early missionaries like Paul could get from place to place a lot faster than they would have been able to had it still been a bunch of independent nations or city-states in that area. So the thing that seemed like the biggest enemy of Christianity at the time was used to spread the word, and it's amazing how that happened. And like I said, the first part of the documentary deals with that, but I would recommend watching the rest of it too. It's really interesting. At least I think so. That's all I have for this week. Like I said, hopefully next week will be something a little special. But for now, I'm Sam Pierce. I'm One Simple Man serving an awesome God. See you guys next week.